Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus Dead or Alive video. As you can see from our last video, Dead or Alive 5 Plus was basically a portable version of the console version released that previous year, Dead or Alive 5, which came out in 2012. Then this came out in March of 2013 in all regions. A lot of us were thinking, oh well, Tecmo is definitely done with Dead or Alive 5 at this point, but it wasn't too long later that it was announced that Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate would be coming out later that year in September of 2013. And now this game basically takes everything this game added, which was a couple of little training things and a few other little tweaks here, and expands upon it. The unfortunate part is, if you owned the previous versions of Dead or Alive 5, there was no upgrade route to this. You either had to buy a retail copy, or you had to buy the full digital copy, as there wasn't just like a patch to Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate. Now the nice thing about the PlayStation 3 version here, which this is actually the original version I bought back in 2013 of this game, is it actually came with this nice little full color manual here, even though there's only like 9 pages in English, and then there are a few pages in French and Spanish. It's nice to have this, as opposed to if you look at the Xbox 360 version, which I believe I bought this at GameStop for like $8 not too long ago. All you got in this was our good old-fashioned, as I like to call these, manual fillet, because it's kind of like a pamphlet that's in place of your manual, and it just tells the warranty, and that's about it. But they're basically both just the same game, just released on either game console. And they added a few extra characters who are kind of highlighted on the front. Jackie, Momiji, Ein's kind of in the corner there, off to the side and not really shown. And yeah, just a bunch of these characters were added, as well as Rachel here. She was an added character in this version of the game. And there was like the power launchers, and just a couple of other little things that made this the ultimate version. But that's enough of me talking about this game. Let's go ahead and take a look at Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate, released in 2013. And we're actually looking at this on the Xbox 360, which it's actually just loaded into my system, so I don't actually need to use that disc that's in the case here. So we're just going to go ahead and press the A button on our wireless controller here and get right into Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate. I'm going to show you a little bit of arcade gameplay here, just to kind of give you an idea of how it was like changed from the previous full retail version. Oh, and just a side note, if I recall correctly, this was actually only $39.99 at retail, so it did kind of help for people who spent $60 on the previous game, but there were enough people who were like, oh well, now I'm spending $100 minus, without the price of like DLC on one game. But let's go ahead and get into this, and let's see what Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate offers, as opposed to the previous year's Dead or Alive 5 vanilla version. So let's get right into this. And of course what I did here was I actually had to downgrade this because it got patched to the latest version, and it's actually now running, as you can see. It first has to ask where our save location is. Now it's running Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate, the last patch before it got patched to the new version. Well, let's take a look at this game and see what we can get into this game. And let's go ahead and check it out. And here, of course, is the title screen. And as I had mentioned earlier, it asks you where your save data is. I have one of those like Jasper systems that had the built-in memory card, so it shows a 256 megabyte memory unit, but of course there's no actual memory card plugged in. Of course we're going to be just choosing some arcade gameplay here, and as you can see, I've played the arcade version of it. everybody from Dead or Alive 5 Plus and Dead or Alive 5 vanilla version, if you will, makes a comeback, with an addition of a few characters such as Rachel, Momiji, Ein makes his return to the series here, Jackie from Virtua Fighter, and as I just said, Momiji, she's from Ninja Gaiden, and of course newcomer Marie Rose and Nyo Tengu. But I'm going to be taking a look at Marie Rose in this bit of gameplay here. Now this character was one of the first like new original characters for this game. A lot of people really got mad about this because she's that like younger character that certain people tend to flock toward. And in this actual gameplay, I have the audio set to the English voices, as you can see. I figured it'd be fun just to hear what the English voices sound like, because I know a lot of people who, just like me, they only ever played this game in Japanese. But you might not be familiar with what the English sounds like in this game, because most people just never enable it. And Helena's actually wearing one of those like weird Christmas outfits that they released at one point. And now, I might as well address the elephant in the room at this point. By the time Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate came out in 2013, a lot of people in the fighting game community, like any of the major tournament circuits like EVO and everything, this game was honestly not taken seriously anymore due to the fact that a lot of the risque costumes had come out at that point, the bikinis, the scantily clad characters. And I can remember for the longest time the vanilla version of Dead or Alive 5 actually was allowed in some of the tournament circuits, but certain costumes were actually banned, and they wouldn't allow players to play as them because they figured, oh well, if this person uses this costume, they're going to actually distract the other person who's actually trying to beat them.
Ready to face your fate.
And now here's another one of those costumes that Tecmo released, their Tecmo Bowl costumes. A lot of the male characters actually got these football outfits, which I thought were kind of cool looking. Although the only thing I think is bad about them is it's hard to recognize, other than like looking at the life bar, what character it is, because the helmet completely disguises him. But as I was saying, at this point, the whole DLC thing had gotten to a fever pitch, and you got to the point where Dead or Alive's DLC cost more than even the $60 original game and the $40 Ultimate quote-unquote game were put together. And
I shall be your opponent.
a lot of people at this point were saying Dead or Alive is just like a DLC cash cow, and it really wasn't worth it anymore. And I can honestly see where they were coming from. I'm one of those people that when these games were still current, I would only buy the actual like full character / debut costume package. I wouldn't go for every single little bit of DLC because honestly, the new costume for this character, the latest bikinis they released for these characters, it wasn't something I was thinking, you know what, I really have to spend my money on something that's just going to aesthetically change a character. Plus, honestly, I was never really up with all the online stuff. I never really got into that whole, oh my god, look at the new costume that I'm showing off this time, or look at this character, how they look now. It was more for me like, let's take a look at the story mode and let's take a look at everything else.
Yay, I beat you.
And now, that's another point I will make. The actual story mode in Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate
You really want to fight this badly?
is the same one from Dead or Alive 5. And I don't know if I had mentioned that in the previous version, but there are some costumes that La Mariposa actually has where she'll just show up as Lisa because she's just wearing regular clothes and she's not wearing her masked wrestling outfit. Now, back to the release of Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate. this got released in both digital and disc versions, which all debuted on the same time. And the cool part is everybody got this in September of 2013. So unlike some of the previous Dead or Alive games where you could literally see releases that were months and months between like Japan and America, pretty much within the same month everybody could play this game. So for instance, the first release, strangely, was the North American release on September 3rd, 2013.
I am ready.
Then next, the Japanese release came out in September 5th of 2013, European release coming out on September 6th of 2013, and then finally, the Australian debut was September 26th of 2013. So, not too much space to, with all the releases. So, not a lot of people were, like, mad that they had to wait for the new version of Dead or Alive to play. And the stage you see here is actually part of one of the Halloween events. And, it's basically just, like, a version of a stage from the game, and they kind of just added a few Halloween elements like the blood moon in the background, and at some point there's like some pumpkins that'll roll down the hill.
Yay, I beat you!
And just like Dead or Alive 2, the voices aren't terrible for the English dub, but they do get grating after a while.
Let the red rose of blood bloom forth.
And speaking of Halloween costumes, that's actually what Brad Wong is wearing here. It's like his like Wolfman costume. They did a lot of those, like they did some Christmas costumes, they did some Halloween costumes. And then they did like a spin, like the one that you saw Helena wearing in round 1 there was reminiscent of a mummy costume they released for Halloween, but instead of it being like mummy wrap, they made it red ribbon. So I guess that makes it into a Christmas costume. But now, as I was saying about the releases, after all of these releases for Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate on the consoles, then on December 24th of 2013, through a partnership with Sega once again, Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate Arcade came out on the Sega Ring Edge 2 Arcade, which was actually just a PC-based arcade system, which was based off of Intel architecture, similar to Sega Lindbergh, but this time it ran like an Intel multi-core processor and a better like NVIDIA graphics card. And the Ring Edge 2 was the upgraded Ring Edge spec, so it ran a bit better of specification, and it could fully render the game you see here at a fairly high frame rate, and it looked really nice.
Piece of cake.
Although the funny thing is, when you really think about it, if
Don't get too worked up. Let the red rose of
Tecmo
blood
actually
bloom forth.
wanted to partner with Namco, they could have released this on Namco System 369 and just directly ported the PlayStation 3 version and really didn't have to do anything. But the nice thing for PC fans, not too long after the arcade version came out, they also got a PC version of this game, because basically the version that came out on Ring Edge 2 could easily be ported to actually Steam here in America, because it was the platform of choice for PC players. And at this time, like, fighting games on PC really hadn't been doing all that well, but yeah, it really did do pretty well, which after Dead or Alive 5 for the PC, all other Dead or Alive versions and future games in the fighting genre, not the extreme sports genre that they had there as a subgenre of this series, got released on PC as well. Unfortunately, only on Steam as a downloadable content. And now another thing that had happened was Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate Core Fighters was a version of Dead or Alive 5 that got released where you could play as a couple of characters. And as it says here in the wiki,
Piece of cake.
a digital version of this game got released as a standalone. I'll read the exact text they have here on Wikipedia. A free digital version of the game titled Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate Core Fighters was released on the PlayStation Store alongside the retail version. Hayashi said he wanted to introduce more people to the genre and make them interested, hoping it would bring back the fighting games of the golden era of the 90s. Soon after the announcement of Core Fighters, Namco Bandai announced they quickly released a game called Tekken Revolution. But unlike Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate Core Fighters, Tekken Revolution was kind of its own standalone free-to-play game, whereas this kind of connected to the main game. Core Fighters features 4 playable characters: Ryu Hayabusa, Kasumi, Hayate, and Ayane. In almost all of the game's modes, and additional characters could be purchased $4 each, and the game's story mode could actually be purchased for $15. And they were all available as separate DLC items, which if you tried to use them before you bought them, it would just give you like a price gate and say, hey, you can't use this, you don't own it yet. Now, I figured I'd show Marie Rose off there, but I'm going to show you another character who got brought back in Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate here, which is actually, as you will see me choose here. And you'll see I actually, when I went back to the menu, it started on Marie Rose because I just played as her. I actually played these gameplays back to back. And I'm going to actually show you Ayn here, who was one of the new characters from Dead or Alive 2, who basically is the ninja Hayate without his memory, and he had trained in the same dojo as Dead or Alive 3 character Hitomi, which is why they have a very similar fighting style. And as I'd mentioned in all the other previous Dead or Alive 5 videos, Hai-chan and Akira always speak in Japanese regardless of the language setting. Sarah and then her brother Jackie, who was added in this game, will always speak in English. The Virtual Fighter characters don't have additional audio tracks, and they don't change if you change the actual language that you're playing in. Now, as I was saying about Core Fighters, this digital version was only available on PlayStation 3. They had said that an Xbox 360 version was slated as possible, but from what I understand, it never actually happened. And now actually more on Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate Arcade. It was the first Dead or Alive game since Dead or Alive 2 Millennium in January of 2000. The arcade was released only in Japan on December 24th of 2013, running on the Sega Ring Edge 2 hardware and using Sega's AllNet PRAS Multiver 2 content distribution platform. So, if you basically wanted Ring Edge with this game on it, you would need to get one that the game was like downloadable content through Sega's AllNet service and still on the system and not like deleted. It's kind of similar to one of those ideas like if you've ever seen a video game development kit where they'll just have the latest build of the game, but they will never have pressed a disc. If you want to be lucky enough to get a prototype of one of your like favorite games, it's anyone's guess if the game will be on there or not. Because unlike, let's say, Virtua Fighter 5 on Sega Lindbergh, which actually was released as a DVD and key chip, this game was only released on the Ring Edge 2 as something through Sega's network service, so you couldn't actually like pop a disc in and install it like some of the earlier Ring Edge games. And now the thing that I kept on expecting Ein to say when he won in this game, that I also used to in the English voices on Dead or Alive 2, I was expecting him to go, "Good vibration." But unfortunately, they took that really silly line out. I thought it would have been kind of cool if it was actually in there, but I guess they figured, let's make him seem not so silly as he was in Dead or Alive 2.
That's how a fight feels.
Because the actual poses that he does in this are very similar to the ones he does in Dead or Alive 2.
Let's go.
Now, I actually don't mind the accent they gave Helena. I think it actually fits her pretty well. It's not, like, as cartoony as some of the voices in some of the Dead or Alive games that they gave some of these characters. Where, like, some of them you swear it's like something like someone's impression of how somebody should sound. But yeah, as I was saying about that Core Fighters version, it's kind of cool that it was more or less like a demo of Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate that you could play and see what it would be like. And therefore, if like there was a certain character that you liked and you didn't feel like you're paying the whole $40 to purchase the full retail game, you could just like spend $4 and say buy Ein or buy Helena or somebody. And it was kind of cool for people who really weren't that quote-unquote hardcore about fighting games. And they wouldn't have to spend the whole price on the retail game or spend the whole price on the digital game. But then again, therein lies the problem. If you're somebody who really gets into this game and you spend $15 on the story mode and then $4 on each of the characters, you could have just bought the disc and been just fine and saved a lot of money. But yeah, it definitely was a nice marketing model, and even if you just stuck with the actual 4 demo characters, you could just get a feel of how Dead or Alive 5 felt if you hadn't played it in a while, which I could recall at the time when Core Fighters came out. I could remember
Let's go.
I could remember a lot of people were like saying, oh, well, I haven't played a Dead or Alive game since Dead or Alive 2, because the big thing you gotta realize is Dead or Alive 3 and 4 were both Xbox and Xbox 360 respectively exclusive. And there's a lot of people who only had PlayStation consoles. And now you can see more of those pumpkins I was mentioning earlier. But as I was saying, there's a lot of people who only had PlayStation game consoles, and they didn't, like, play Dead or Alive 3, or they didn't play Dead or Alive 4, or they didn't even play Dead or Alive Extreme or Extreme 2. So their last experience with the series was Dead or Alive 2 on PlayStation 2
One strike.
or Dreamcast. So a lot of people,
Ready to fight.
speaking of that mummy costume that I was mentioning earlier, there it is. That's the mummy costume I was thinking about, that the Christmas ribbon one was kind of the quote-unquote sequel to. And this is actually the same stage I had fought Brad Wong on earlier, which is like a rooftop stage. And I don't recall if it happens in this gameplay, if it happened earlier, but when you knock that like billboard down, a subway train comes crashing through the stage. Like that train that you just saw in the background, that actually comes crashing through the stage. And it's kind of cool to have that interactive element, like I was mentioning in some of my earlier Dead or Alive 5 videos. With Dead or Alive 5, they kind of wanted to make the game a bit more, like the backgrounds were a bit more interactive, and they weren't just like this flat area that you're fighting in. It was more this place that the characters were there. Because unfortunately a lot of the games, yeah, there's that train I was mentioning, but a lot of the games, even in the 3D age of fighting games, a lot of the stages just feel very static, and it just feels like you're in a playground or you're on a street. and it doesn't feel anything like
No one can
a
stop
place you're actually in, whereas these stages have a lot more interactive elements, even in the just like regular stages. Like for instance, there's a lot of stages with trees where you can knock people against trees, and like this one, the tigers jump out. And now, I remember two of the stages that were brought back in Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate were that forest stage from Dead or Alive 3, and there's also that stage with like the cliffs that you jump down to the next cliff from Dead or Alive 3 as well. And I know at one point the Zack Island stage was actually brought into it as well, which is actually really cool. And like these stages for Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate were actually just part of the core game. And then the Zack Island stage was just a free DLC bonus for anybody who owned the game.
One strike.
But of course, you had to download the piece of DLC. And now,
Prepare!
yeah, as I was mentioning, here is that forest stage from Dead or Alive 3, but now it's like nice and high definition and everything. But the only thing I think they did well in this game was how they managed downloadable content when you did not own it. Is that there were what were called the costume catalogs, and basically it was the downloadable content that downloaded to your hard drive, but without the rights to actually use it. So let's say if your friend used the DLC costume but you didn't own it, you'd still see him playing as that character in that costume, but you just couldn't play as that costume until you owned that piece of DLC. But it didn't make your game incompatible with everybody else's. Oh, and that's another point of contention with this, is Dead or Alive 5 and Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate could not cross-play. Once they got up to Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate, you needed Ultimate in order to play online anymore.
That's how a fight feels.
But Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate was a nice upgrade with a bunch of nice additions, and I thought it was worth the $40. But of course the DLC thing was crazy out of control at this point, and they just wanted to get more money out of you. But that was Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate. I'd highly recommend everybody give it a try, and I will see you in the next Dead or Alive 5 video. Bye.